If you're a beginner, you're just getting started, you're still learning the ropes, stop doing these things now. Your future self will thank you. Shooting wide open at f1.2 or whatever your lens goes down to all the time. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying there is a time and a place. I understand that you may have spent a decent amount of money on a lens that can go down to f1.2, but you don't always need to shoot at it. Let's say video, for example. If you look at a lot of movies, it's rare that they are shooting wide open for big portions of the movie. The aperture choice or the t-stop choice is to do with what is being conveyed in the scene. They're not just shooting wide open because it looks nice. There's a reason behind it, be it that they want you to focus on that character and not see anything else in the scene or whatever else it could be. We actually notice that they're shooting way higher, f4, f5.6, so you can actually see what is going on in the scene, what's going on in the background, where they are, the environment that they're in. That can portray a lot more information than just shooting wide open where the background is blurred out and you can't see anything other than the person's eye. Also, for photos, let's say you buy an f1.2 lens and you think, now I'm going to be able to go and shoot family shoots really easily, only if they're in a straight line next to each other. If there's any depth to that image whatsoever, if one of them is like a foot in front of the other person, or 2 foot in front, you are going to get one person in focus. That eye autofocus is going to stick to that one person, but the person behind or in front, they're going to be out of focus. Believe me, I've been there. There's a time and a place of when to use your aperture wide open, and it's a lot less than you think. Shooting in the middle of the day. There are 2, potentially 3 good points of the day to shoot. Those are first thing in the morning when the sun rises, and then at sunset, golden hour. But also potentially blue hour, which is like a little bit before, a little bit after the sun has set. Generally speaking, when the sun is much higher in the sky, it is not a nice time of day to shoot. You're rarely going to get good looking video outside in natural light, good looking photos when the sun is like that. Plan your shoots, your video, whatever it is that you're creating to be closer to the beginning or the end of the day. Anything that I've made that I'm proud of has generally been shot closer to one of those 2 points. I'm not saying you won't be able to get good stuff, but I'm telling you it's going to be a lot harder to do it in the middle of the day and a lot easier to do it at one of the other points. Now that comes with the added pressure that you have a lot less time to shoot at sunset or at sunrise because it's a smaller window where the sun is going up and coming down. So you have to be aware of that compared to the middle of the day where you have like 8 hours of full bright sunlight to do whatever you want, but it's not going to look good. Spray and pray. Now with modern cameras, especially the newer ones that have come out now, you can hold that shutter and just get a lot of frames per second. Now there's a time and a place for this as well. Namely things like wildlife and sports photography where they need a very specific part of that image. But if you're shooting family photos, if you're going out shooting landscape photos, you don't want to be shooting in that fast drive mode. It may seem like a great idea when you're out shooting, but when you get back and you have to start culling thousands of images and they all look pretty much the same, you are going to really hate yourself. Try and be more concise with what it is that you're shooting and really think about that shot and compose it in the right way instead of just holding that shutter down and hoping that you'll have one that works. Worrying about noise in image. Well, what is noise? Noise is that grainy look that you get when you really start to push the ISO. It used to be a really big thing that you need to really minimize the amount of noise in your images in camera photography we're talking about here, but the same somewhat applies to video. You can really push ISOs now to allow you to shoot whatever you want to shoot. If you really need a fast shutter speed, but you're in a lower light environment, crank that ISO up. You can push those ISOs really high these days and very easily reduce that noise in post. With the AI stuff that exists now as well, it's even easier to do so. There's no reason that you can't get the exact image that you want using the settings you need to use because you're scared of pushing that ISO anymore. Just push it, get the image you need. You can figure it out later in post. Now, if you're in a situation where you don't need to be pushing the ISO, obviously don't do it. Like, don't just be using the wrong settings because you're lazy and you don't want to change the settings when you have enough light to be able to do it in the right settings. We're talking when it's darker, harsher, a bit more challenging conditions and you really need to push the ISO in those environments. For video, having to shoot in S-Log when you first start. It's an added thing you have to learn. It's an added thing you now have to grade in post. But the fact of the matter is S-Log 3 is to maximize the dynamic range that your sensor and your camera can capture. Dynamic range is being able to see everything in the highlights, everything in the shadows, and in between, like a balance. If you're in an environment where you don't maybe need a huge amount of dynamic range, there might not be a reason to shoot an S-Log. Controlled environment, studio environment like this right now, or an environment where you don't really see any windows, it's just an interior. If you want to make it easier on yourself because you just started, maybe you don't know S-Log 3, you're not familiar with it, you might not need to shoot in it. You can probably get away with using something like S-Cinetone in Sony cameras, which is what they used to just have in the higher end cameras, but is now in pretty much all Sony cameras that come out. And it is a good looking, we can say, cinematic image that is ready to go. It's baked in. What you see on the back of the screen is what's going to be baked into the video file when you look at it, when you send it to the client. Saves you time. It's not complicated. You don't always need to use S-Log 3. There's a time and a place. The phrase gear doesn't matter isn't that true. Gear plays a part in everything that we make. If you have the wrong lens for what it is that you're shooting, it might not work. If you don't have the right lighting, it might not work. If you're at an event, you need to capture good audio of somebody, but you only have a shotgun mic, you don't have a lapel mic on them, gear matters. If you need to make sure that your shutter speed is the proper shutter speed for the 180-degree rule because you need to show that motion blur, but you don't have an ND filter, gear matters. You are going to need certain gear to shoot certain kinds of things. So that blanket statement of gear doesn't matter isn't true. What I will say is you don't need the most expensive stuff that is out there. There is so much third-party gear now made that is so good compared to 2, 3, 5 years ago. It was a different world to what we're at now in 2023, the time of making this video. Lenses, for example, there's a massive selection of third-party glass from Tamron, from Sigma, from Viltrox, from Samyang, a bunch of other companies as well. They all make really good products now, which in some respects you can compare to the higher end stuff. It might not have the same features, like physical features on the lenses, but just getting started, you maybe don't have the budget, cheaper third-party budget-friendly lenses will work. They will suffice. Don't be tricked into thinking you need the most expensive, the latest and greatest. Avoiding the use of sound. This is a mistake I made when I first started, thinking that just capturing the video and putting it with some music is going to be enough. It works okay, but when you start adding sound, it creates this whole nother layer of story, this extra depth, this feeling, this vibe to your video. Be that from sound effects, from wherever you're using them from, be that somebody talking, a voiceover. Pay as much attention to capturing sound in the environment that you're capturing video in as you are to capturing that video. You've heard the phrase, I'm sure, before, that people will watch a low quality video as long as it has good sound, but people will rarely watch a video that has terrible sound with just good visuals. Music isn't enough anymore on its own to go with your video. You need that added layer of capturing sound as well. I did a lot of these things myself. I see a lot of other people doing these and making these same mistakes. That's why I'm making this video, to help you out. In 1, 3, 5 years from now, you'll look back and go, oh yeah, I used to do those as well. We all did it. We all have to start somewhere. Hopefully it helped you out.